Hello, Candid Connection listeners. Welcome to the July episode of our Candid Connection podcast. And, I just want to start by saying, I know that it's July 29th. We're running a little bit late this month, but there's been a lot going on here at ACS and ACS CAN. So thank you for bearing with us. We're getting it in under the wire. And I really just want to start this morning with some exciting news. I'm very excited to introduce and welcome the new co-host for the Candid Connection podcast and also the Michigan Government Relations Director, Molly Medenblik. Hey, Molly.
Hi. I wish I had some witty intro, but I don't. So
it's fine, just this is we don't need wit, we just need you. And I've just been so happy to have you here over this past month, and I'd love for you to just take a few minutes and just introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Yeah, well, thank you, Ashley. So my name is Molly Medenblik, and I like to tell people the easiest way to remember to pronounce it is Medenblik, like made in China, but made in Blick. So, but it's okay if people don't remember that. So
that's a good one.
Yeah. So I got my last name from my husband. So his family, I heard them say it at one point. So
there you go.
Easiest way. So a little bit of my background is so I worked in the state legislature for about a decade. So I was about 5 years in the House and 5 years in the Senate. And so my most recent time in the Senate was with Senator Schmidt. So my policy is a little bit more on the education side of things, just because he was the chair of and still is the chair of the education budget. But so I met my husband in Lansing as well. And for some reason we decided we wanted an adventure in life. And so we moved to Boise, Idaho for a couple of years, and we were there. It was beautiful. Loved the mountains out there and out west, but we just decided we're Midwesterners. So it just wasn't home for us. So we decided to come back. So we've been back in the state of Michigan for about 2 months. I've been with ACS CAN for about 1 month now. Ashley, you have been beyond amazing. So thank you for helping me.
Glad to have you here, Molly.
I appreciate it. So it's been, as people like to say, drinking from a fire hose. So, because like I said, my education background or my policy background is more in education, not really in health policy. So there's a lot of stuff I have to learn, but I do know the legislature pretty well. So hopefully I can mesh learning all of this stuff and then knowing the legislature. It'll hopefully blend quite well.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? I love to say Midwest is best. So we're so glad to have you and your husband back here in the mitten. Yes. And yeah, your experience working on a budget, being the chief of staff to the chair of a committee working on a budget is huge. And it's, something we really need here because we work on appropriations so much. So
sure. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. Yep.
I'm so glad, you'll pick up the tobacco policy and all that fun stuff, but we're just excited to have you. And, you've been here for a month, so we're just going to dive right in. I'd love for you to give us some state updates.
Sure. Yeah. So talking a little bit about the budget, I started maybe 3 days before we passed the budget here. And so,
how could you not make an impact in those 3 days?
I know. Yeah, exactly. We got everything we wanted in those 3 days. Weird. But so I had to kind of jump in and try to figure out what our asks were and what actually was coming out in the budget. And so it seems like ACS CAN, we had requested a $10 million appropriation and the budget for tobacco cessation, smoking cessation programs, because Michigan, compared to other states, but also just for the sake of Michiganders here, we don't do a whole lot. We don't spend a whole lot of money on kind of, helping kids and, adults stop smoking or not pick it up in the first place.
Exactly.
And so we did not get our ask in the Senate version, the House version, nor the governor had it. So unfortunately, we didn't get it. But there was a small increase, so we were happy with that. There was an increase, yes. And so, in talking to the department, they were, thrilled with any kind of an increase, and so they were kind of surprised by that as well. So So that was good, but we have a lot of room for improvement.
We do,
for
but
sure.
it's important to celebrate the steps in the right direction.
Absolutely,
And we definitely made a step in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, I think we did. And, just kind of talking to, like I said, the people in the department was, like, hey, this is good. We can make this money for good use. So we were happy with that part. But so I will be jumping more into the budget for, next year already. So we'll have to deal with that. But kind of on the same line of tobacco issues, we a little bit before I got here, I know we were working with the legislature or telling them that we weren't happy with this package of bills. It was House Bill 6108 and 09, and then Senate Bills 576, 577, and 720. And unfortunately, they made it through the legislature. So then we were working. I know, Ashley, you were doing a lot with contacting the governor's office as well, and our partners here in the state to let her know we would respectfully request a veto on this package of bills. And unfortunately, she did sign them last week. So we're not really happy about that, but we're kind of in the mode of educating people on these bills, mainly because on the surface, it looks like they should be good, right? So
it's misleading on purpose.
You're right. Exactly.
Big tobacco loves to play those games with us.
Yes. So I think I remember my first question to you, Ashley, was, so when I first started, I was like, okay, so this package of bills raises the age to 21 to buy, tobacco products, but it makes it easier for kids to get their hands on it. I was like, help me understand this. So I can see why, maybe this can be confusing, like you said, on purpose to the public. But mainly the issue is enforcement here. And so whether it's 18 or 21, whatever the age is, the statistic that I just heard about not that long ago was the failure rate for sales to minors in the state of Michigan is 42%. So basically it's almost half the time for the kids who walk in can get the tobacco that they want,
despite their age.
Exactly.
It's shocking. And I don't think a lot of people know about this.
I didn't. So
it's so disheartening. And I know Michigan does not measure up well against other states. So that 42% failure rate is pretty high for other states across the country.
Yeah, that's important for sure to mention. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, every state, not that we should be okay if every other state is like that, but it's not. We're pretty bad. Michigan has kind of a long way to go, it seems like, with trying to fix these problems, and these bills don't fix that problem. So that's kind of why we were a little upset with that. So we'll have to continue our work on all things tobacco related in this state. But I know, like I said, Ashley, your volunteers have been great with this, and so we'll just have to continue that effort on that end.
Keep beating the drum. And our amazing grassroots volunteers have been engaged on Senate Bill 720 since March.
Yeah.
They were sending those action alerts to the Senate asking them to vote no. We were sending, action alerts and calls into the governor's office asking her to veto the legislation. Obviously it didn't happen, right? But now we're switching over to that education piece going into the summer.
So switching gears a little bit on another one of our priorities for this year is oral chemo fairness. So the legislature's not in session right now. So, there's not a lot of movement that's happening, but at times it's really nice when they're gone because you can work with like the partners that we have and like staff as I like to say, like staff, not completely biased, not just because I was staff, but that we do a lot of work. And so
you do. The staff is what makes Lansing work. I'm telling you.
Sure. And they're there all the time. The staff's always there. So meeting with them and meeting, like I said, with our partners to kind of get these, just to get a plan in place so that when they come back into session, it's not like a scramble, right? Like, so we're, I feel pretty good. And I know that this has been, an issue for like a decade that we've been working on in this.
Not long at all.
Yeah, no. I don't remember multiple iterations of this bill trying to go through when I was a staffer. But so as I was saying to someone the other day, hey, I've only been working on this for a month, so I'm excited. Like, I'm fresh. Like, it doesn't feel like it's been that long for me.
But
So
we're so lucky to have your fresh energy and connections, because you can, kind of move some people into the right place. And,
Yeah.
I'm feeling hopeful. I know you're feeling hopeful.
Yeah.
I know a lot of our listeners are very used to this, but if you see it scrolling along the bottom of the screen down there, we have a website all about oral chemo fairness in Michigan, and it's www.fightcancer.org/fairness. So if you're hearing this for the first time, you want to learn about this, this has been a very long fight, like Molly said, a decade. You can go ahead and check out the website, which is fightcancer.org/fairness.
Yeah. So, obviously, I don't know if we need to, since everyone probably kind of knows, but for those who might be tuning in that don't know, it's basically we would like to treat oral chemo the same as intravenous chemo, right? Like, we want it to be covered for people. So,
and another statistic that makes me a little concerned in Michigan being low is like 47 other states actually have oral chemo fairness on the books, right?
Yeah.
So Michigan's one of like 3 states that doesn't. And it's really, I love Michigan. Michigan's so great. And I don't like to see us lag. I don't like to see us be behind in these things. Right. So this is something the legislature is long, long overdue on passing.
Yes. And so, like you said, I am feeling hopeful, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. But, you kind of hear some things and it's just like, I think maybe we use this to our advantage. People are a little tired of it, right? So
there's issue fatigue for sure, because we've been working on it for a long time.
Exactly. So hopefully we'll see some movement when they come back into session in September. So
keeping my fingers crossed. Well, absolutely. Molly, that was an excellent first date update. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, co-host. You're making my life a little bit easier. So I'm going to dive right into some quick federal updates. And, like Molly said, the state is not in session right now. So like the state legislatures, like the senators and the representatives are kind of, they're back in their district. They're doing some district work. They're not in session passing legislation. And so things are kind of ramping down on the state side, but when things ramp down on the state side, they kind of ramp up on the federal side.
Right.
Which is nice.
Kind of them. Yeah.
Exactly. Almost like they plan this out.
Right.
It helps provide some balance. So I don't know how to respond. Oh, sorry, that was my watch was talking to me. My apologies.
Scared me.
Anyways, we're gonna leave that in because that's kind of a little fun.
I like it.
Keeping us on our toes.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had some exciting news on the federal side yesterday. Literally announced yesterday, the Senate released its fiscal year 2023 spending bill. And it actually includes some pretty exciting increases for cancer research. So it included a $2 billion funding increase for the National Institute of Health, a $291 million funding boost for the National Cancer Institute. And it also includes a $1 billion for ARPA-H, which is that Advanced Research Projects Agency on Health, which is kind of a mouthful, but basically what ARPA-H is you all remember, back when President Biden announced his Cancer Moonshot Initiative, and, Dr. K, our executive director, our CEO, was lucky enough to be in the room there. This program, this ARPA-H, is really what he's going to be funneling that spending through. So it's really going to help accelerate new innovations and treatments for cancer and other diseases too. But, the goal of Cancer Moonshot is to end cancer as we know it. And that is what ACS is working towards. And the spending bill and those funding increases are going to make a really big impact in our ability to do that, which is exciting. Very exciting. So, our federal representatives are actually also on recess in August. So, our federal congressmen and women and our senators come home. And they do a lot of constituent work too. And that gives our amazing ACT leads and volunteers here in Michigan the opportunity to, set those recess meetings with their representatives. And these are kind of fun because we actually get to to say thank you and to
Right,
be
right.
nice to them. You know,
Yeah.
we're not always asking them to not do something. Sometimes
Right.
we're thanking them for doing the right thing.
Right.
And this Senate funding bill is something we're thanking them for,
Sure.
because we're very excited. And, you know, Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters have been, you know, really great champions for these funding increases and for access to care initiatives, you know, making sure everyone has health insurance.
Yeah.
So we usually like them, but we're especially excited about,
Sure.
you know, these funding increases.
Right. Right.
And the exciting thing is that these recess meetings will really get us set up for Leadership Summit and Lobby Day, which happens in September.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited because it's my first Leadership Summit and Lobby Day in person, right?
Yeah.
Because COVID, we haven't been in person. And Molly gets to go this year.
I know. So it's my understanding that usually my position doesn't really get to go.
No,
so
the government relations directors usually don't go. I don't think Andrew ever went, not once. So Molly's here for a month and she's going to DC.
That's right. That's right. It sounds really important. Sounds like I did something right. But
we're so excited to have you going. I'm so excited to be there. And, you know, this is when we literally bring a volunteer for each congressional district across the country to Washington, D.C. And we, you know, we lobby them on Capitol Hill. You know, we ask them to, you know, we ask them to pass the legislation that we want to pass. And, you know, in our next episode in August, we'll probably get to go over those asks and, you know, let you all know the kind of stuff that we're doing when we're in Washington, D.C., which is pretty exciting.
It is. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So
it's cool.
I'm pretty excited that
it's a big
I get
effort.
to go. So,
exactly. Yeah. We're so excited to have you as well. Cool. You know, that was it for federal updates. Kind of quick this month.
Yeah. Well, this is my first month, so it sounds. Well, I'm just like, hey, yep, sounds good. So this is what we got. So we'll see how it goes next month.
Yes,
so.
things definitely pick up at different parts of the year. You know, we're kind of in this like recess period where our volunteers and you are doing a lot of work on the staff side, and your volunteers are doing a lot of work. So, you know, after we kind of sign off here, we're going to, you know, get to hear from one of the amazing physicians at Karmanos Cancer Center. His name is Dr. Stephen Daveluy. He is a dermatologist, and we talked about skin cancer prevention because, you know, July was/is for another 24 hours Skin Cancer Awareness Month. So, you know, we talk about all of the important pieces, you know, how to prevent skin cancer, but if you think you might have skin cancer, ways to identify it and how to get treatment. So I hope you all enjoy this great conversation with Dr. Daveluy. It was super fun. He's a really fun doctor, fun guy. So I hope you all enjoy.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're a patient with, you know, a relatively rare type of cancer, you may see a medical oncologist who treats that and has a great deal of experience in that specific type of cancer.
We do need experts in every different field to be able to deliver that integrated approach.
At the Barbara Ann Karmanos Cancer Institute, all the staffs are focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is to deliver the best care for you, the patient.
Hello, Candid Connection podcast listeners. Welcome to July. It's Ashley Hall here again, the Michigan Grassroots Manager for ACS CAN. And July is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, and I am super excited to welcome Dr. Stephen Daveluy to the podcast today. He is a dermatologist at Karmanos and an associate professor at Wayne State University. Welcome, Dr. Daveluy.
Hi, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's been super hot lately, and the sun has been shining down. And as you can see, I have this alabaster white skin here. So, you know, skin cancer is something that I'm always very concerned about and I'm always thinking about. So, you know, as we go into Skin Cancer Awareness Month, you know, as a dermatologist, what are some of the most important precautions that you recommend to prevent skin cancer?
Yes, well, you hit on one of the important points for preventing skin cancer, and probably the most important point, which is sun exposure. So like you mentioned, we do Skin Cancer Awareness Month during sunny months because that's when it's really important to take action to prevent skin cancer. The sun and the UV light or ultraviolet light that comes from the sun is the number one cause of skin cancer and what leads to most people getting it. As you mentioned, the more fair skin you have, the higher risk you are. Having more pigment in your skin or melanin does offer some protection, but we still recommend sun protection for everybody, no matter what your skin tone is. So there are a few different ways to protect yourself from the sun. The one that usually pops into people's head first is sunscreen. And sunscreen is great. It's a very good way to be able to spend time outdoors in the sun, but still protect your skin from those harmful UV rays. We usually recommend people go with a sunscreen with an SPF or sun protection factor of 30 or higher. But I even recommend going with a 50 or maybe 60 because most people don't put it, really no one puts it on as thick as you're supposed to and as thick as they do when they're testing it. So the recommended amount of sunscreen, if you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, so you'd be putting sunscreen on your face, your ears, neck, arms, and legs, is about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces. So if you think of a shot glass or about the size of a golf ball, and that's a lot of sunscreen.
It is a lot of sunscreen. I mean, I think I probably put on that much, but I don't think anyone else does.
Yeah. And I'll say you're doing great because we're this late in the summer and there's been a lot of sun and you don't have a tan. When patients come in, I always say, how are you doing with sun protection? And sometimes they say, okay. And then I say, you have a tan. Let's talk a little bit more about it. Most people don't put on enough. So that's why the higher numbers have been shown in studies to work better if you aren't putting it on as thick. You kind of lose a little bit of the SPF. So giving yourself a little bit higher number helps buffer that. And then one of the big mistakes people make is that sunscreen, when you're in the direct sunlight, it only lasts about 2 hours and then you need to reapply. So people kind of think, all right, I've got my sunscreen on, I'm good for the day. But once you've been in the sun a couple hours, time to reapply.
Okay.
You might be able to stretch it a little bit longer if you're not in the direct sunlight the whole time. So if you're outdoors, but you're mostly in the shade, you might be able to go 3, sometimes even 4 hours if you're not in the sun. So I just always try to keep mentally aware of the time I'm actually in the sun. But sunscreen isn't the only thing you can do. So you, like I just mentioned, staying in the shade and avoiding the sun. So if you have the option of standing in the shade to talk to somebody outside or standing in the direct sun, take a couple steps over to the shade and that'll do better. Hats can be super helpful. And we like the wide brimmed hats because they protect your eyes, your face, your ears, and your neck. Versus just a baseball cap doesn't really get the ears and the neck and the sun gets through the sides. And then they have clothing can also protect you. And they have clothing that has been rated for its ability to block the sun. So in sunscreen, we say SPF. For clothing, we call it UPF. So you can get UPF clothing, and even clothing that doesn't have the UPF still offers some protection. It's kind of nice to get the special clothing because often it'll be long sleeves, but it'll be very cool and it won't feel too hot because nobody wants to wear long sleeves on a really hot day. And then I think I covered everything. Oh, sunglasses. The one thing which as a dermatologist, I don't really take care of the eyes, but it's also important to protect your eyes from the sun. And then to think about the hours that the sunscreen or the sun is at its most intense. So it's usually between 10 a.m. and about 4 p.m. Okay. So those are the times when you really need the sunscreen. Whereas, in the summer, the sun might not set until 9 at night. You don't really need it after 7 p.m. in those later hours. And a helpful trick for that is the shadow rule. So if you're standing outside and you look down at your shadow, if the sun's right overhead, like high noon, when it's directly overhead, your shadow is just this tiny little dot below you. Then I need sunscreen. But as the sun gets lower in the sky and the rays aren't as intense, your shadow tends to stretch out. So if your shadow is longer than your height, so I'm 5'7", if my shadow looks like it's stretching out more than 5'7" away from me, I know that I'm getting into a safer time when the sun isn't as intense.
That is so cool. That is like one of I've never heard of that before. I'm going to be watching my shadow from now on.
Yeah, it's nice because you have it everywhere you go. You've got your shadow. So It's a nice, convenient way to know.
That is so interesting. And, I love that you brought up, skin pigment. So my husband is from India and he obviously has dark skin. And when we first met, I would always put on my sunblock and he was like, I don't need sunblock. I've never used it. And I was like, no, that's not true. You definitely need to wear a sunblock, and skin cancer happens to run in my family. So my grandfather and my dad both have skin cancer. And So it's something I'm always very aware of. And I was glad I was able to pass on that knowledge to him. Now he's annoyed with having to wear sunblock, but we got to keep him protected.
Yes.
So, you know, are there different kinds of skin cancer that exist?
There are. So there are three that are the most common and probably the ones that people may have heard of, or like you said, they may have a family member who's had, and then there's a few that are more rare ones. So the three common ones, the most common is called basal cell carcinoma. And for the viewers and the listeners, if these words might be kind of funny, if you go to Karmanos.org, they have some nice information about each of these. So you don't have to try to take notes or memorize these kind of strange sounding words. You can kind of go there as a reference if you'd like. So the most common is basal cell carcinoma. And then the second most common is called squamous cell carcinoma. And then there's melanoma. So people may have heard of melanoma because melanoma is one of the more dangerous skin cancers. It can affect people of all ages. It's one of the more common cancers in young adults. Because a lot of cancers show up later in life, but melanoma can show up at any time. And melanoma often looks like a mole gone bad. So if you think of a mole as just a little brown spot on your skin, a little tan spot, usually they're one color, they're small. Melanomas are sort of like a ugly, nasty version of a mole most of the time. So they'll have multiple colors and different shapes. And so we have something we call the ABCDEs of melanoma. So if you have moles and you're not sure, you have a skin spot pop up, A is for asymmetry, which means it's not symmetric. So one side's dark and one side's lighter, or one side's black and one side's brown. B is for border. If it has a nice smooth border, that's good. If it looks like it's kind of reaching out and growing little tentacles, that could be more worrisome. C is for color. And when it comes to color of moles, there's not a good color or a bad color, but it's good to have fewer colors. So if a mole is just one color, we know it's okay. But if it has multiple colors, that would be something you'd want to bring to your doctor's attention. So if it has a brown area, a tan area, a black area, a blue area, because that means on the inside, it's not as organized as just a nice mole. And then D is for diameter, or the size. And a rough estimate is about the size of a pencil eraser. Is about, if you would have one bigger than that, it could be something to bring up. The one exception is some people will have bigger moles that they're born with, that they've had all their life. So those ones, it's okay that they're a little bit bigger, but usually they don't have the other features. That's another good point. There's no one of these features that's, oh my gosh, it's melanoma. But if it has more than one of these, we start to worry. And if it has any of them, bring it up to your doctor. And then the last one is the E, which is evolution, which means that it change. If you ever have anything on your skin that you notice is changing, good idea to bring it up to your doctor, see a dermatologist so we can check it out.
Yeah, recently I had a mole that I had my whole life, but it started to grow up, like it was getting high. And I was very concerned because of all my history of skin cancer. Luckily got it checked out. It was totally fine. And they just kind of lopped it off. But that was something that I was always looking for.
Good. You're doing everything right with your skin. I love it. Thanks. Very good. And you're a good example. That's another thing that's really important for parents when it comes to sun protection. Just like bike helmets. If you don't wear your bike helmet, your kids are not going to wear a bike helmet. Yeah. So it's important for parents to do like you did with your husband and lead by example. Put on your sunscreen, wear your hats, wear your swim shirts that are sunproof, so that the kids, it normalizes it for them. And they say, okay, if mom and dad do it, I should do it too. But if you're kind of too cool to do it, mom and dad, then the kids are going to pick up on that.
I am not too cool for sun protection, let me tell you.
I love it.
So are there any kind of common signs of like the basal cell and the squamous cell? Am I saying that correctly?
Perfect. There are. So a lot of times the basal cell will actually sort of look like a little pimple. But, a pimple might pop up, hang out for a while, and then go away. The basal cell kind of stays there, and then it might kind of get bigger. So a lot of times they're pink, and we often describe them as looking sort of pearly. And what we mean by pearly is it almost looks like the top part of them is a little bit see-through or like translucent. It's kind of a hard thing to explain, but sometimes if people see it, they go, oh, it does kind of look pearly. So the big thing with that is if you have a new growth and it's getting bigger and it's not going away, even if you think, oh, it looks like a pimple, bring it to your doctor's attention. Basal cell and squamous cell are more common the older you get and the more sun exposure you get. So they're often related to that chronic, everyday sun exposure, walking out to get the mail from the mailbox, walking between your car and your house, or your car and the store, just those little bits of sun. And the more you get, the higher the risk. Basal cell and squamous cell are both usually on the areas that get that kind of sun. So the areas that get sun when you're wearing clothes, your face, your scalp, especially for us guys, as we lose our hair and our poor scalps are exposed to the sun all day. You really got to wear a hat because our scalps get a lot of sun. Ears, the nose, and then like the tops of the arms and the hands, because those are the places that get sun all the time. And then squamous cell often looks like a wart gone bad. So it tends to be kind of drier and rougher, and it gets a little bit thickened, and people sometimes think it looks warty, where it sort of looks like a dry, crusty wart. Either one of them can also ulcerate or open up, where the skin opens and it's like an open sore. And a lot of times the open sore will be in the middle. So for sure, if you have something that's bleeding or an open sore, get it checked out. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there's more info on all these at Karmanos.org too. So if you're kind of thinking, wait, which one did he say? Just jump on the website and check them out again.
Yeah, well, so I have watched my dad and my grandpa. My dad has basal cell, and my grandpa had melanoma. Unfortunately, he did pass away. That was a while ago, but I have watched both of them go through treatment for skin cancer. So, what are some of the treatment options for people who, maybe they find that pearly spot, or, they see a mole that's going through the ABCDEs, what should they do? And, what kind of treatment could they expect?
Great question. And sorry to hear about your grandpa. Like we said, melanoma is that dangerous one. So it can be bad. Treatment wise, a lot of times, like you mentioned, if you notice something, bring it to the attention of your doctor. They'll probably send you to the dermatologist, or sometimes even general practitioners will do a biopsy. So the biopsy is usually the first step, and the biopsy is getting a sample. So we got to look at the inside and look at the skin cells to see, is this a skin cancer or is it not? It's tricky because with the skin, sometimes the biopsy looks like they removed the whole thing, but the biopsy is never the cure. So once we confirm it's a skin cancer with the biopsy, then we do a little bit larger surgery to take care of it and make sure we got it all. So that's really common for basal cell and for squamous cell, and even for melanoma. Is the first step is just removing it, because that's the one good thing with the skin, is that it's at the surface. So if something is growing there or causing trouble, it starts near the surface and then it grows deeper. And when it gets deeper is when it can cause more problems. So a lot of times we can cut it out of there and cure it. Sometimes that surgery will happen at the dermatologist's office. Sometimes it will happen with a special dermatology surgeon named a Mohs surgeon. It's named after the doctor who invented it, Frederick Mohs, M-O-H-S. And it's just a special skin cancer surgery where they don't take as much normal skin around it, but they check to make sure they got it all out. Yeah. And then sometimes it'll happen with an oncology surgeon, who's like a cancer surgeon, especially for the melanomas. So like my good friend and colleague, Steve Kim at Karmanos, he does a lot of melanoma surgeries, because depending how deep the melanoma is, you might only need a small surgery, or you might need a surgery where they also check the lymph nodes. Because if cancer is going to spread, it often goes through the lymph channels and the lymph nodes, which is kind of like the body's drainage system to take all of our gushy, spongy fluid that we're full of and circulate it back and filter things out. So they may have to check your lymph nodes if your melanoma is deep enough. And then so that's really good for the early stages when the skin cancer is not very deep. If it is deeper, we're very lucky to be alive at the time we are, because they have come out with some great new treatments for melanoma, basal cell, and squamous cell that are sort of things that oncologists do, but not what we would traditionally call a chemotherapy. So there are newer medications that help your own immune system find and attack the cancer, or that cancers have these mutations in their DNA. And so we also have some treatments that block those mutations or block the products of them to sort of really target what's going on in the cancer and shut it down. And these therapies have been game changers. They're a lot more effective than the older therapies. They have a lot fewer side effects. People are living longer, even if they have really advanced disease where the skin cancer has spread. So don't lose hope if you do find it late. there are still some good treatments out there. Places like Karmanos have great teams of oncologists who can go over all the treatment options, and they do trials for even newer medications that are coming out.
You know, every time I talk to someone from Karmanos, I learn something new. And I just am filled with hope at all of the like new innovations that, you know, places like Karmanos are spearheading. And you're right, like, don't lose hope. There are so many options out there. And, you know, the doctors like you at Karmanos are leading the way. And we're just, you know, we're so thankful to have Karmanos as such a strong partner with ACS CAN and ACS. And now, I know you've mentioned it a few times, but, you know, if someone's listening to this and they're like, you know what, I do think I need to get this checked out and I'd like some more information, you know, where can they go to find out more about skin cancer, specifically at Karmanos?
So definitely, I keep saying Karmanos.org.
Yes.
It's our website. And if you look, you can search for skin cancer, and they have info on basal cell, on squamous cell, on melanoma. And then another great resource is the American Academy of Dermatology. They have a lot of good resources, videos about how to apply sunscreen to make sure you're doing it right, how much to use, other ways to protect yourself. And their website, because it's American Academy of Dermatology, it's aad.org. So Karmanos.org and aad.org, both great options.
Awesome. Well, it has just been a pleasure to speak with you today, Dr. Daveluy. I think we just learned that I'm already doing everything right when it comes to skincare. But I hope that, you know, our listeners were able to learn something. And thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us. And, you know, let's make sure that everyone knows to go to Karmanos.org if they have any other questions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me and for this opportunity to get the message out there. So hopefully we can prevent more skin cancer and people can still have a great summer.
Yes, that's what, you know, ACS's mission is, to lead the fight for a world without cancer. And, you know, we love to partner with organizations like Karmanos in this mission. Cool. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks again.